I'm India Vine, spiritual mentor and coach, and welcome to the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast.
Welcome to the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Danny Kennedy, and I'm here to help you become the very best version of yourself. India, welcome back to the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast. This is, I believe you're the only guest who has been on this is either 4 or 5, but you're definitely this is definitely the most episodes any guest has been on the show, so you must be doing something right.
I think it might be 5, which
I think
crazy.
It is, yeah. I mean, it must be a good thing, right? But welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to see you. We haven't seen each other for a long time either. We've had a bit of a catch up before we recorded, but how have you been?
I'm good. I feel like this episode is going to be a bit of a trip because I feel like because we've done 5 episodes and we've both evolved so much, yet still the same, yet I feel like so much has happened over that period of time when we first had that first episode, which was such a crazy moment for both of us, I feel. Yeah, I feel like the evolution is going to be really cool to witness in this episode. I have a feeling that's just going to...
100%. Even on the drive over here, and we were talking about it before we hit record, but referencing back to that first episode that we did, I think you were telling me before that you were super nervous in the lead up to it. And for those of you that haven't listened to that episode, I mean, I've spoken about it on the show a number of times, that moment, but we will have that linked in the show notes below. But that episode, I said to you after we recorded, because I was so shocked that you knew more about podcasting than me, and you apparently had never done a podcast before. And I said to you that I'm not putting out our episode until you have released your own podcast, and you did that pretty much straight away. And so we put the episode out. We had incredible feedback, but it's a moment in time that I refer back to so often for a number of reasons, right? And I think for me personally as well, like the growth that I've seen personally over the last, let's say 3, 4, 5 years, particularly the last 2 years, is largely due to that conversation. Like I referenced it the other day to a mentoring client of mine now, like even being able to say that, I think is largely due to that conversation. But just the impact it had on me, it was one of those moments where I'm sure all of your audience and a lot of my audience would understand this moment where something inside of you just lights up and it's like, whoa, what was that? I want to experience more of that. I want to learn more. And from that moment, that really did start my kind of growth and journey on myself. And it was a side of myself that I'd never really put time and attention or intention to until that moment. And as you said, so much has changed for both of us since then. One of the things that you say quite often is that it's not about what you do, it's about who you be in certain moments. And I'm curious to know, how much do you feel like who you be right now is different if different at all in comparison to when we first met?
It's interesting that you bring this up because, before we were starting, you were like, what do you call yourself? Because I've had iterations like mindset coach, manifestation coach, business coach, all the different things. And I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I just call myself a spiritual mentor because it doesn't matter what you do. Like it literally doesn't matter if you are a personal trainer. It doesn't matter if you're an artist. It doesn't matter if you're a tradie, brick and mortar business. If you're going for your dreams and you have something that I would call like that's alive within you, like call it your spirit, call it your motivation, call it your passion, call it your spark, whatever it is. If you have that thing that's alive and aware that you're here to do something, I literally feel like the sky isn't even the limit. And what's interesting about you asking me that, I've tapped into the fact that like that's how I mentor people now. It doesn't matter what you do. Because it's like people will come and ask me, how have you done what you've done? And I'm like, I can't tell you how I've done what I've done.
In terms of like a step-by-step strategy,
I don't even know.
Yeah.
I literally don't even know. But I can tell you who I've been through it. And I can tell you the way I've operated and I can tell the way I've led myself. And the difference between who I am now and who I was on that podcast episode, I'd say the level of conviction has shifted only because before I was speaking to what I thought I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm speaking to what I know.
Now there's evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On a degree that still blows my mind, and it's not just evidence with myself, it's evidence with others. I even look at you, same thing, where it's like, you know, our first episode was just hilarious in so many ways, but you know, how you've grown and evolved, it's like, I can ask you what you do, you'll tell me, I know you've got like 10 different projects going on at all different times, and it's never about like what you're doing, it's about who you're being and why you're doing what you're doing, and the energy and the frequency that you operate in, your belief systems. Like, truly, I think if you are doing what you believe on some level that you're called to do, and you follow that, and you just keep operating by developing that part of yourself, I literally think, like, I truly believe that anything is possible. Truly.
I 100% agree. I think there would be people listening or watching at the moment that hear that, right? And this is a question that I get a lot. And I've had this query myself at some point in time. That version of you from the first episode where you said you knew like what you wanted, you knew what your purpose was, you knew without evidence like the direction you were going in. I think for a lot of people that can be difficult, particularly if they haven't been exposed to levels of thinking through someone like yourself or whoever it may be. Being told like, hey, step into this future version of you, or just trust in your purpose and stop worrying so much about the how or the when. And even though there's no evidence yet, like it is happening around you, it's happening for you.
Yeah.
How do you kind of, I guess, explain that to someone in a way that allows them to fully believe that? Because I know, you know, when I look at, as you said, like there's evidence now, not just within yourself, but within the people that you've been able to impact as well. Without you being able to have that level of trust at the beginning, I feel like that's hard for that to eventuate, right? But when you can get that trust, as you said, like the sky's not the limit, it's well beyond that. So how do you get someone to buy into that belief when there is no evidence?
I think you've got to ask yourself, like, it takes a lot for a human being to actually be born into this lifetime. It takes a lot, you know, and I think we need to question, like, do you genuinely think that you just came here to be a fill-in, that you came here to just go to a job, pay some bills, stress about bills, try and figure out how you can numb yourself out until you're doing the same thing on the weekend or whatever it is? Like, do you genuinely think that's what life is? Like, I think at some point you have to ask yourself, like, what is the purpose of all of this? What is the purpose of life? And I don't think anyone knows the answer to that, but I know that it's not for me to just sit there and think, oh, I just have to go and get a job and I have to, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting a job, but what I'm getting at here is, like, you've got to believe that something bigger is at play, because if you don't, I don't think you're going to, I don't think there's any point not believing it, because it's like, if you've
what's
gotten
the alternative? Yeah,
exactly. And it's, if you've gotten this far and you're not where you want to be, it's like Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and thinking you're going to have a different result.
Yeah.
Why not? Even if you don't have evidence of it. And I think evidence is a big word, right? I use the word evidence a lot, and people are waiting for like this big show-stopping moment where it's like, oh, now I can believe that I'm here for something bigger, or I'm here to do something, or this thing that I feel inside of me is actually supposed to become something. And the thing is with that is, like, it's not always going to be evidence even externally. Sometimes you just feel something within you and you're like, that I don't know what that is, but I'm just going to keep following it. I don't know what that is, but what you said, when you felt that thing within you and it lit up, and I'm like, well, I don't know what that is, but I've got to trust in something because it's different. It's different to anything else that I've felt, you know, in my life. And the thing is as well, without going too deep, because obviously we've only just kind of like hit upon this on a very conversational level, but without going too deep, in order to create evidence around something, a formula that you can use to do that, and this isn't my formula, it's actually from the author Neale Donald Walsch, who wrote a book called Conversations with God. And if you have any religious or anything, just use the word universe, higher self, whatever it is. But he's essentially a metaphysical teacher.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, the formula, and this is all channeled wisdom, if you will. The formula to get evidence of something in your life is to go from hope, right? Hope to belief, to knowing, to evidence. So the two things that I want to highlight in that is, one, people go, but I don't believe it yet. Perfect. Try to believe it. Have hope that it might be real.
Yeah.
Have hope that it might eventuate to something. What's the worst case scenario? You go back and do the thing that you were already doing. Most people are already living their worst case scenario.
Yeah. I say that all the time.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm just going to hope. I'm just going to hope that this thing that I'm hearing that's lighting me up is leading me somewhere. Because that's going to lead to some sort of belief, because you're going to start seeing synchronicities, alignment, things like that. When it gets to a knowing, and how I describe that is, it's just like this, I don't know how I know this is the truth, I just know. That's when you see the evidence. And the thing is, most people want to see the evidence first.
Yeah.
So that they can believe it.
I think you can almost, I was just thinking of this now, you can almost like reverse engineer that to an extent, right? When you've got someone who doesn't have that belief or the knowing in their purpose or themselves, you can almost look at, okay, what's your reality at the moment and the things that you're unhappy with. At one point in time, that was not true.
Yeah.
But you had this belief or this trust that these bad things are going to happen, or the outcome that you didn't want to happen was going to happen, and there was nothing to suggest that it would. But you continued to believe it, you continued to speak it, think it, act it, and now all of a sudden here's the evidence, because it's the same process, right? It's almost looking at all of these things in your life that you supposedly aren't happy with, or that you didn't want to happen, but you spent all of your intention, your focus, your energy on these things that nothing would suggest that were going to happen, and now all of a sudden they're here.
The funny thing is, people have such a hard time believing in manifestation, things like that, yet the terminology self-fulfilling prophecy, that's not in any way a spiritual concept. That is quite literally something that most people understand, that's just a human thing. A self-fulfilling prophecy, the definition of that is believing something false to such an extent that it becomes true.
And you find evidence of it.
Now, which one do you want to choose as false? The one where you're not meant to amount to anything, you're not actually good enough, you're not cut out for everything, it's not all working. We don't know which one's false.
Yeah.
But whichever one that you get your energy behind enough, what that's saying, that's a very human definition. But what it's saying is whatever you get your energy behind with such intensity is quite literally what you will create in your life. And I think what I want to point out here, this has been a really big thing for me to remind people, is people listen to podcasts like this, right? Or listen to an hour-long thing around manifestation, and then it's like, okay, I'm going to go practice this, and I'm going to go practice it for a day.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, I went and did all the things and it didn't work.
Yeah.
Right? Even people that are very well attuned to this, it's easy to hear this and go, oh, they just think about something and the next day it's there, because it's like I can tell stories of crazy things that I've manifested, but I'm going to tell the story in an hour. So it's going to sound like I just had this thought and then all of a sudden it was just smooth sailing and everything was like, oh, this is perfect and it's all going my way. And that's where people get tripped up, because then it's like, okay, but I'm doing the thing and it's not necessarily working, or I'm having this happen, or this isn't working out for me, or whatever it is. And so they think that something's wrong. But what I say is like, you've got to, if you're going to live your life like this, if you're going to adopt this way of thinking, you've got to go all in to the point that it doesn't matter if your life is up in flames. You see that as this is all a part of it.
Literally on the way over here, I was re-listening to one of your masterclasses on the way over, and you use the word delusion a number of times in it, right? Like, is that basically what you're speaking about now? Like almost having this sense of delusion that yes, nothing externally would suggest that what your belief is actually happening around you, but you just stay in that almost state of delusion.
To someone else, it would be delusion.
Yeah.
Right? How I'll frame it is someone could be living my life right now and think I'm absolutely delusional for believing the things that I believe about it. I operate from such a place of inner foundation first that it's almost the outside is often an illusion. Like the outside that I'm seeing at that current moment is often an illusion, and there's different things at play, you know, without going too hard. I do think the universe tests us a little bit, and not in a way that it's like something to be afraid of, but I do believe there's a bit of that plays out. But the regular person would find it to be delusional. And when I say regular person, it's just the person that's not operating with that knowingness within you.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I could say that I've learned over the years, because there's a lot of different people saying a lot of different things about spirituality, energetics, frequency, manifestation, everything. Business, personal training, nutrition, everything.
Yeah.
The one thing that I'd say is the common denominator in what I've seen to be true is that everyone has their own truth, and the outside should only ever be amplifying that point of certainty, that point of knowingness within you, whatever that is. If that knowingness is like, I'm going to be the best mum I can possibly be, or even if the context is just like, I came here to do something bigger than I'm doing right now. If you know that to be true, that will get you so much further than trying to do the practices and the rituals and all the different things, because it's like that for me was always like a really challenging thing. It's like I would listen to all of this stuff, but it wouldn't necessarily land in like, okay, well, I've got to do all of these things to make that happen. It was more like I can feel something within me that guides me. And from that point of like following that and following the next right aligned action and following the next inspired nudge and following the next download or whatever you want to call it, that's what's built everything. And sometimes I've gotten distracted with like, okay, I need to put this thing in place and that thing in place and that thing in place. And I often say, like, if you can just find the thing that makes you feel alive, that makes you feel like what you want to know to be true is possible for you, that's all that matters. All you're doing is looking for the thing that works for you, is looking for the thing that brings you deepest within you.
Follow the good feeling.
100%. And to get back to the original question, like, there's even been people that have, there's a certain manifestation that I'm thinking about. Like, it was a whole quantum leap that we went through last year with buying this house that we bought, and it was the story in it. And I'm pretty sure that's the masterclass that you're referring to when I told the story of that. Everyone would have thought I was delusional doing what I was doing. Everyone. And then afterwards, they asked me how I did it.
Yeah.
You know, and so I don't think it's this thing that it doesn't feel delusional to me.
Yeah.
But to the outside world, it would.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's answering that, but it's more like the knowingness that you have within you's got to be the strongest thing.
Yeah. And, referencing what you said before around all the practices and stuff, there's a fine line, right? Because it comes back to the exact conversation we started today with. It's not about what you do, it's about who you be. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do this meditation, this breath work, this, that, and the other. It's like you're coming back to the energy of, okay, do these things to get this outcome. And so you've kind of fallen out of it.
100%.
Which is interesting, right? And so the thing that I think a lot of people struggle with, and, I definitely have as well, and even when you were speaking before around like someone goes and tries something for a day or a week and then it hasn't happened and like, okay, well, this didn't work. I even found myself slipping into that. Yeah. And I'm like, I teach all my clients. I've seen evidence with myself like this whole time as to how that's not true, right? It was literally after one of our conversations, you and I had an hour Zoom call, I think it was. And I believe this was 2022. And we got on the phone and you kind of asked me like what it was that I wanted at that time. And I reeled it off to you. I'm like, I want more online clients. I don't know why it's not building. I'm doing all the things. I know I can get results. And your response was, you don't want them. And I was like, what? And, by the end of that call, you kind of guided me to the point where I understood that, okay, there was a lot of heaviness, a lot of the thing that I had been working towards for so long was no longer aligned. Right. It was really hard to let go of. But after that and deciding to, kind of combine two of my passions together and shift the whole approach, which was a big leap in itself to just go, hey, I know you guys are paying me a good amount of money, but this thing's wrapped up and done. If you want to come over here, you can. If not, then don't stress. But when I've told the story a few times when I launched like my first mastermind, promoted it for a month, no signups.
Yeah.
And so in that moment, my initial feeling was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like I thought this was the aligned thing.
Yeah.
And this is not the aligned thing.
Yeah.
But then I had to quickly come back to, it doesn't happen. Like I know this shit. It's not just going to happen straight away. And like, it's all meant to happen the way it's happening at the moment. And I didn't start my PT business and then have a full book of clients within a month or a week. Same with online coaching, same with the podcast. And so for me, it was like, we talk about looking for signs from the universe.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just get selected with which ones we want to fucking take on board and which ones we want to leave, right? And so for me, that was like, okay, this is the sign. It's like, it's not going to happen straight away. And I really detached myself from expecting it to. And again, like from one of your masterclasses, I use this energy or thought process around, okay, this next one, I openly put up a post actually, talking about exactly how it played out. 0 signups. This is what I'm going to do next. This is how I'm kind of feeling about it. And coming into the second round, I was like, okay, if I have 1, 0, 100, I'm showing up as if there's 1,000 people on this call. And I'm going to detach myself from the instant outcome or gratification from it. And that was like the thing that I needed no one to sign up for that first one. I needed no one to sign up for that first one. So then that led me down, the path and the belief. Like that was kind of like the belief I needed, which sounds really weird because it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it really was. And so me talking about this a very long way of asking the question around focusing on who you are being.
Yeah.
How can people really double down on that when it feels like, or when things are difficult, right? It's like going to the gym. It's fucking easy to go to the gym when it's sunny outside, summer's around the corner.
Yeah.
You feel great, your friends are going, and you're like, fuck yeah, let's go. But when it's raining, you can't be bothered, you're a bit tired, life's stressful, it's very easy to not do it. But those are the sessions that really count, right? And so how do you stay in it when everything feels like it's going against you? And obviously we won't get into any detail about it, but I feel like you kind of had that experience towards the end of last year, I think it was. And so how did you kind of respond like yourself in that period of time? I'm sure even though knowing what you know, it was quite difficult, but how did you really kind of stay in it when things didn't feel good?
The biggest thing that I want to highlight in that is, I said the words before, the universe tests you, and it's easy to hear that and sort of feel like, well, that's annoying or that's frustrating or whatever it is. But look at who you just became in that moment, because if everyone was going to sign up in that mastermind when you first did it, one, how are you going to coach and lead the people that go and do something and it doesn't work straight away?
Correct. Yeah.
Right? You then become the evidence. You become the expander for someone that, and that's what I believe our value is. Whether you're a coach, mentor, leader, whatever, it's irrelevant. Even if you're just someone's best friend. Hey, I've been through the worst breakup of my life. I thought I was never going to love again. I thought I was done. I thought my life was over, and I landed better than I've ever been. You just became so unbelievably valuable for someone in that moment. And I really believe like that's who we came to be. I call it being an expander. Like you just expanded someone's universe by going through what you did, and how you led yourself through became the story that you went to tell. And the power of storytelling, like, because I do what I do, and I believe I was put here to be an expander on a very big level. And what I mean by an expander is I think a lot of people are trying to be someone they're not to become really valuable for others. But how I see it is my job is to be so fully myself and do something so incredibly crazy with that, that it then expands someone's mind of, she's not that different to me.
Yeah.
And she's done the impossible. But the thing is with that is you're going to have different seasons, right?
Yes.
You're going to have different seasons, because it's all well and good to believe something when everything's going well. That's not often where we create our evidence, right? And I'm kind of answering this in a two-part, because for people like you and me, we do this for a living. We become the evidence for other people and the expanders and the storytellers to keep people in that energy of belief, to keep people in that energy of certainty. And so for me, my context for my life is that this life that I'm living, this business that I'm building, I call it a business, but it's really the legacy that I'm building, the mission that I have. It's bigger than me. And so my human kicks and screams when my ego is being absolutely mauled to death because it wants things this way and this way and this way and this way so it can look a certain way.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, your impact, that's what you're compensated for. The law of compensation, universal law. We're compensated for the impact that we have on the world. Sometimes the impact's because it's a quantity of people. Sometimes the impact is quality. And when you can change someone's life because you sit down with them and say, hey, I've been through something that it actually felt like my world was literally falling apart. And I was only getting prepared for something that I never could have imagined. The value that you have in that moment, the ripple effect that you have in that moment for someone, and then what that becomes for someone else in a story and a story and a story, that impact is so huge that the context of my life is I live my life like I'm going to tell the story. And I think about that when I'm in the middle of it. Because I think about it and I think, okay, well, if everything happens for a reason and I'm an expander and I came here to do what I came here to do, this is going to become someone else's evidence one day. And so how am I showing up to it that it becomes someone's evidence?
Yeah.
And I believe that belief system is what made that quantum leap last year happen. For those who are listening to this and they're like, well, that's great, but I'm not a coach or I'm not a mentor, or I'm not a storyteller, I'm not an author, I'm not a podcast, or whatever you want to call it. Something that I say often in really hard times is you didn't come this far to just come this far. And what that means is if you have seen any synchronicity from the universe, any ooh, I started listening to this podcast and I felt really good, or I took action on this thing and it made me feel this way, or even if you want to call it signs from the universe, whatever you want to say, if you feel at all connected to something bigger than you, right? That your life is not always as it seems, something bigger is at play. You can just say to yourself, I didn't come this far to just come this far. Once you're in this world, what I will say is you kind of can't dabble, because the universe is really, really powerful. So if you say, I want the relationship of my dreams, and then your boyfriend breaks up with you the next week and you go, hey, I said I wanted the relationship of my dreams and now I'm single and heartbroken. Yeah, because he wasn't the guy.
Wasn't the right one. Yeah.
Right? But you can't dabble, because when I say the universe is listening and it's powerful and it responds, that's not something, that's like the law of gravity. It's not, does this exist? Does it not?
It's not a question.
Right? And it's like everyone believes in the law of gravity. You're not about to jump off a building. But they don't believe in the universal laws at play.
Yeah.
Right? If we knew how powerful they were, we would treat them like actual laws.
100%.
Right? In the physical world. But you can't dabble. If you are at all connected in any kind of way to I believe that, and look, I think the law of attraction is strong. I don't think you listen to a podcast like this. I don't think you read any kind of book with any kind of this language.
Yeah.
If you're not meant to follow the path of bringing this into your timeline. And if you want to call it destiny, I think that some people are meant to follow this path. And I also think some people aren't, but they would not be led to a podcast like this if they're not supposed to. So once you're in, you're in. And, my experience over the past 6 months, without going into detail, I went through something at the end of last year that rocked me at my core. It really rocked me. And as you've been saying, it's not about what you do, it's about who you be. And based off of what I went through, it was an experience that affected my well-being at a really deep level. And it affected my mindset, my nervous system, all of these different things. And so, people would say, well, it's easy for you to say, you do this stuff all day, every day. When I say it was like going back to kindergarten in this work, it was like I couldn't access a positive thought if I tried. I was so far away just based of the fact that it was nervous system related. So it was almost like, if you want to put it into a nervous breakdown, you can relate it to that. I was so far away from my regular state of being, thinking, all of these different things, that it was like going back to kindergarten with everything. Yet on a very deep level, and from just saying to myself over and over and over again, you didn't come this far to just come this far, and to look at things like, okay, when have there been times in your life where you got an unexpected experience and it turned out to be the best thing that's ever happened to you? Well, if I look at my experience, every incredible thing that's happened in my life, I didn't plan.
Yeah.
Every single one of them, every quantum leap, every huge blessing in my life. If the listeners don't know, I have 3 kids. I didn't plan any of them. They chose me, right? And I couldn't have written that. I couldn't have written how perfect it was. I couldn't, everything, Danny, that has happened to me that people want to know, how did you do that? How did you pull that off? how have you been able to quantum leap like that, manifest like that? It would be so beautiful for me to be like, oh, well, I just did this and I did this. And it was like this 3-step process that every time I do this, I get exactly what I want and the best things in the world happen. It's never been like that. It's almost been like there's been such a deep trust in like the universe knows better than I know what is actually playing out.
Yeah.
And so like, yes, I can manifest and yes, I can have my desires, but I also know that in the grand scheme of things, my mind is so limited to what's actually possible for me that it's almost a surrendered version of manifestation where it's like, just show me which way we're going. Like I trust you that deeply.
Yeah.
And so when this thing landed, it was like, it was pretty intense because it was, those things were hard. Like it wasn't just like I was going through things and I was like, oh, I just find my positive mindset. There was times where I was like, this is bad. Like this is intense. And I was scared and I did have a lot of fear. And, you know, I had to do a lot of work that I wouldn't necessarily usually have to do. But truthfully, like the thing that I came back to over and over again is like everything incredible in my life that's ever happened came from an unexpected experience. This was an unexpected experience, not in the way that you usually want them to be.
Yeah.
But it's like, I even asked myself, do I just believe what I believe when things are good? Do I just believe what I believe when everything's going my way? Like it was really an experience where it's like, this is the real training ground, right? Not when everything's like roses. It's like, this is the real training ground. And what I would say from that is I do think we go through certain periods of our life that really quantum leap us and propel us in the future, because there are times and periods where you do get the evidence. And what I mean by that is what you said before in, you know, you launched the mastermind and people didn't sign up. Because you did that and then you had huge success afterwards, that opens your capacity to receive so much more and to go for so much more, because you then have periods where it's like, no, it's okay. This has happened before.
Yeah.
And everything's good. And I think we have to have those. Like we have to have those times where it's like, I refer back to this now to know that, cool, everything's all sweet. When it looks like my life's up in flames, we're sweet. Everything's golden. But it's one thing to hear, you know, someone else go through that.
Yeah.
And then you have it in your own experience. And it becomes something that's when people are talking about wisdom, when people are talking about like lessons learned, that is invaluable.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
And, you know, similar to what you said before, it's like that impact and the legacy that you're trying to leave. I always refer to my clients now when there's those difficult times, like, okay, this is a ticket for growth.
Yeah.
It's like you asked for the ticket, you got the ticket, let's fucking go. And so that legacy that you leave now is amplified because of that experience. And as you said before, kind of just referring back to that, it's like, okay, all of these times, and as you said, it's very difficult when maybe you haven't had it yet, but when you're in it and you come out the other side of it. And anytime I have moments like that, obviously not to the extent that what you did at the end of last year, but when I have those moments now, it's just that constant reminder of like, okay, similar to what you said, the amount of wisdom or impact I've been able to have because of moments like this is exactly why I am where I am right now. And without those, we're not here. And so I think it's just that, again, it's that trust. It's like, okay, this is happening for a reason.
Yeah.
Which is fucking hard when you're in it, but being able to just change that perspective. And I think it's also that level of like surrender to an extent, and just like letting go and just allowing it to be what it will be, and not trying to be in that. You know, one of the things that you've said that stuck with me a lot is like being in that contraction and like problem solving energy, or the expansion and evolution. And even just that physical feeling of lightness when you're able to just surrender to what is. Even if it's not what you want, even if it's not, doesn't feel good, it's like just that letting go instantly makes everything feel so much more easier to deal with in a sense.
I think it's a good point that you bring up, because people have a really difficult time actually I'll frame that again. People are massively limiting their potential from needing to control, right? We hear of a lot of people that, you know, have a lot of success and, you know, they turn around and say, I got everything I wanted and I wasn't happy. And I think on a deep level that comes from a need. Like, it's like, I need this to happen because it means something about me.
Yeah.
That sentence, biggest blocker to manifestation there is. I need this to happen because because it means something about me. It means something about how worthy I am. It means something about how valuable I am.
Your frequency becomes circumstantial.
100% circumstantial power. And the thing is like, when it is that, you kind of miss your whole life because you're so in a place of control that it all needs to happen the way that you think it needs to happen, so that people, you know, think this about you or whatever it is. You end up, one, I think, missing your whole life, and also really missing the potential of who you actually came here to be. Yeah. Because it's like, when you're controlling it because you need it to be that way, I think one of the biggest kryptonites for people is success sometimes, because when they're having success in a certain way, it's exactly what you said before of like, but why would I give this up? Like, we had that conversation. I said, the only reason you're not manifesting what you want more of is because you don't actually want it. And your limited mind is saying like, this is what's my next level. It's like, no, Danny, your next level is like something far beyond this. But it was your ability to let go of like, I need this. Because I don't see what's next for me, because I don't see the more, because I don't see something that's bigger than I can even see, and because it means something about me. So if I let go of this thing and it all goes pear-shaped, I'm not gonna be worthy, I'm not gonna be this. That, you can't play in that and play in the quantum. You can't play in that and play in manifestation. I'm just gonna say it pretty simply. If you want to play in the quantum, you want to create the impossible to be possible, nothing about my life makes sense. Nothing. Not one part of it makes sense. Nothing about my business growth, nothing. Nothing about any of it. In fact, any of it makes sense, right? If you want to play in the quantum, you can't bring your ego. It can't mean something about you. It's got to be like, I said that I wanted, like and I'm referring to the quantum, it means like playing in manifestation, playing in the field of possibility, playing in infinite potential, infinite possibility. If you want to play in that, you've got to relinquish it making sense. Because like I just said to you, nothing about my life makes sense. So why would it make sense on the way to creating it? Why would it make sense on the way to experiencing it? And it's that same thing of like, you've got to put it down of it meaning something about you. And you know, so many people say, well, but like, what about goals? And do you believe in this? And do you believe in that? And I think you've got to find the thing that works for you. I really do. I feel like if that expands you, just what you said before, like if it contracts you, it contracts you. If it expands you, it expands you. For me, goals don't expand me. Timelines don't expand me. They don't feel like I'm playing to my potential. So for me, it's more like, I'd love to experience this. I'd love to experience that. But what I'm really doing is I'm essentially aligning myself with what I just say, my highest timeline for the good of all. And when you're playing in that, When you're aligning your timeline to your highest timeline, which just essentially means the most expansive reality that you could call in right now in this time of your life, when you're playing in that, and I appreciate that this is a pretty intense conversation, so people might need to listen to a couple of episodes before. But when you're playing in this like energy of, I actually trust the universe more than my limited mind. I trust in my higher self more than my ego. I trust in, again, this knowingness that something bigger is working for me in my life. When you can play in that, and it's like I align my timeline to the highest timeline and for me and the good of all, what you can create in that is actually crazy. Yet in the same breath, if you need it to make sense on the way to it, and you need it to be linear, and you need it to be roses and sunshine all the time for you to believe that that's what you're doing, or if you need it because it means something about you, if you can work on those little pieces, that's when people say like, how did you do that? And I say, it wasn't about what I did. It's about who I be and what I believe in. And honestly, it's about me getting out of my own way.
Yeah. I love that. You've summarized that so well, and in a way that I think will make a lot of sense to everyone. And I think even just on that, just quickly, and we'll move on from this bit, but the whole part around like it having to make sense or it being logical, like the way that I've really started looking at that is that, okay, if it makes logical sense, it's something that you've experienced it before.
Correct.
Or you know it's already within reach. So how is that playing big enough? Like how? If it's familiar, if it's logical step by step like that, you're instantly selling yourself short. And I completely understand what you're saying around the goal setting thing, right? Because even from that frequency perspective, it's like, let's say it's financial. Okay, I've got this target. Every part of you is now trying to align with this limitation that you've put on yourself right from day one. It's like, this is a limitation. So how the fuck do you not know that you could have gone well above and beyond?
Put it this way. I'll do the expander thing for a second. In 2021, my business did 75,000 for the year. In 2023, my business did 2022, 2021 to 2022, my business did 630,000 in the year. January and February were maybe 5K, if that.
Of 22.
Yeah. So think about that, right? And I didn't go, I'm going to do this. It was just like, I think I did set a goal. I think from memory, I said I was like, oh my God, if anything was possible, like it was like, if I could wave my magic wand and anything was possible, I'd love to do like a $300,000 year. And to my mind, that was like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I'm going to do this and I'm going to figure it all out and because to be honest, it was like, I don't actually know how that could happen.
Yeah.
So it was such just a place of, look, if I could decide what I would love, it'd be this, but also show me the way, like show me what we're doing. If I was looking at it from an attached place of looking at my reality and deciding what's possible, doing a 5K month in January and February, how is my mind going to conceptualize that at the end of the year I could be at $630,000? Right?
Yeah.
And I would even say the times that I've slowed myself down and the times that I have, and I also want to preface, like, I'm only using that to help people understand that things aren't linear. Like I'm not saying I think there's all sorts of incredible values and measures of success. But the times that I've slowed myself down has been getting in my mind and going like, how can I recreate, or how can I
Yes.
do what I've done in the past? That's the thing that slowed me down so much. And that's why I say, like, I wish that it was linear. I wish it was step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's not. It never has been, because everything that I did in 2022, I don't even know what I did.
There's nothing linear about it. Yeah.
There was nothing. I was just following.
Yeah.
I was just following the momentum, following the inspired actions, following the nudges, following the creativity. And the biggest thing is, like, I really think that's all there is to do. But then we either have created it once, and so we go and try and recreate it based off of what we did rather than who we were being. And when it's like, when it's almost that energy of like being so light like that, and being so almost like, how is this all happening? Because it is so, the frequency is so clean.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know, when people get into something and there's like success, and it's kind of not necessarily straight away, but like there's just all of this momentum, it's not coming because it's like someone told them what to do and they went and did it. It's coming from passion, from excitement, from aliveness, all of this different stuff. And then we look back and we go, oh, how can I recreate that? Because I've got to keep recreating, or I've got to keep doing that thing to have that. But this is where I say, and this is so important, because I really do think that the universe is going to constantly keep pushing us to deeper into our own alignment, deeper into our own fulfillment, deeper into our own zone of genius, our own gifts. And people get attached to what they were doing to have success. And I say, no. Once you've, the best thing about operating on a frequency level is, once you've created it once in your consciousness, you can always recreate it.
Yeah.
And you do not have to do the same thing. Once you're an energetic match for it, you can never not be an energetic match for it. But people freak out because it feels like, I have to keep doing that thing or it's not going to happen. And maybe sometimes they all make pivots and shifts, and it's like, oh, it's not happening again.
Yeah.
I have to go back to that. It's all a rearranging. But the thing is you can't lose anything that was created from that frequency, because it's not a byproduct of what you did. It's a byproduct of who you are. You can't lose who you are, right? And when I say you can lose parts of who you are that you're meant to lose, but on a soul level, you can't lose who you are. And so when you're doing it with intentionality, and you're doing it with integrity, and you're doing it with soul, and you're doing it because it's like, this is what I came here to do, you can't lose that. And that's such a gift. But as an entrepreneur, as like, you know, anyone that's going to do big things, this is why I call myself a spiritual mentor, because it's like, if you don't have this understanding and you just look at things logically, and you look at things practically, and you try and look at all the data, and you look at you're just going to put yourself into a place of spinning yourself out and taking yourself out of the game.
Yeah.
But I believe at a very, very deep level, the universe is constantly pushing you further and further and further into alignment, into being who you came here to be. And so what often happens is you go out and create like a huge amount of success, and then things might shift afterwards, and people go like, what's happening? And I just think what happens is, it's like, and I've coached so many people through this, it's such a common thing, is you have an experience where you create the success, but it's like, okay, this is what's possible. Now you're going to do it in a way that it's like the fulfillment, the joy, like there is no sacrifice needed. And what I think is really, really big is, I believe our soul evolves as we let go of what's not ours, as we let go, call them limiting beliefs, call them things like that. And so what happens is, it's almost, you create all this success, and now it's like, cool, we're going to do that again with a few less limiting beliefs this time, with a few less sacrifices, with a few less things that weren't necessarily you, which you're the perfect demonstration of this, because it was like, you had a lot of success, we had a conversation, and it was like, oh, hang on a minute, there's a whole nother chapter for me. So it was like, you had I don't want to use the word privilege, but I'm going to say, because you went out and you did something, you followed you just followed that passion. You followed that momentum. You created the success. What's so powerful about that is when you do that and then you transition into doing something slightly different, you've already got the capacity. You're already an energetic match for success. However, not everyone's going to take that leap to go deeper into their alignment, deeper into their joy, deeper into this place of like no sacrifices needed. But there's a period that what it takes for you to jump is to get rid of the limiting beliefs. Now look at when you did that. You went to the mastermind, didn't work. You could have taken that on board as evidence of like, oh my gosh, I've got to go. I've made the wrong decision. I've got to go back. You held the line, held the energy, whatever you want to call it. This is what we call when the universe tests us. You held the energy and now you have more, but I wouldn't just say, I'm not just talking about more on a material level. I'm talking about more on a fulfillment level, on a joy level, on a satisfaction level, on a passion, purpose, more spaciousness, more like, and when you do that, and this is why I really do believe that if you're someone that is, call it an entrepreneur, call it building your own business, having a passion of some sort, you've got to have a spiritual practice because the most powerful thing about this is people think it's a destination. I'm going to build this or I'm going to build that or it's going to look like this. My world has evolved so much over the years. It's like it's had different labels. It's had different, it had nothing to do with the label and everything to do with who I was and how I was impacting the world at that time.
Yep.
And having this understanding allows you to get deeper into this place of, it's like, okay, I created that, but now I want more. I want more satisfaction. I want more fulfillment. I want more joy. I want more spaciousness. I want more, for me, like I've pivoted so many times and it's like, okay, now I want more time with my kids and more time to just be in my own frequency, in my own vibration. Like, and so in that, you get to evolve at such a deep level and people get so hooked onto this business has to work or it's this idea and if that doesn't land then I've got to make this thing work and it's like no, you're supposed to constantly be evolving. You're supposed to constantly be following the thing in wherever you're directed to impact the world in any capacity at any time, and having that understanding. It's like, okay, this is a game I'm playing. This is a game I'm playing. It's an inner game that when I approach it from that and I take away the outside and I take away the structural what it is and I actually just focus on like that feeling of where am I being called to go? What am I being called to do? Even if it's crazy, even if it's like shut the whole thing down.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what do you have in store for me? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Yeah. And that was the thing, like, as you said, that the decision to go, okay, like let's go of this thing that you have spent every waking hour building over the last 7 years, right?
Yep.
But the lightness afterwards, it was like, as you kind of just said, like that level of fulfillment went up as the tangible stuff or the, however you want to refer to it, like went to zero, as in like get rid of this thing that created so much lightness.
Yeah.
But then even on the rebuild of like, okay, like as you said, like what's next? Like show me what's next. Building up like even though on one hand you've got like at the time like this online coaching business and this large amount of clients that tangibly is a lot of work and fulfillment and helping a lot of people. It was like that very first mindset call with one person felt so much more fulfilling and so much more light than what all of that did before. And so the level of even like perceived success or whatever felt significantly more there. And then that's what continued to lead to more. And even since then, like the integration of the two, like just listening to you speak about that then like really brought up a thing for me around like my biggest month of sales within coaching, right? And it was very much so like, the fuck, this felt easy. It was like light. It wasn't difficult. I wasn't fixating on anything. It just happened. And then that urge the next month to go, okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
Like how the fuck did that happen?
Yeah.
Can we do it again?
Yeah.
But just like really stepping away from that. And as you said, just trying to lean into that highest version or the highest frequency, and not necessarily think that, even like I did this bit of content the other week around, or had this conversation with a client around, like, nothing from the past has anything to do with what happens next unless we allow it to. The unfortunate part is that majority of people use everything from the past to decide what's possible next.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to let that go, I think in the instances where I've been able to do that has just showed me evidence as to what is possible. I think it's just being able to, as you said, I can't remember exactly the word you used before, but it really resonated around just like, how can we do this again?
Yeah.
Even easier, with even less, with less limiting beliefs, with less friction and heaviness.
Yeah.
And I think that feels good, right? And so when you feel good, you're going to continue to attract more of those 100%. Good feelings.
Everything comes down to belief. I truly believe that. Everything comes down to belief. I feel called to share a story. Like I won't go too deep in it, but what I mean by that is I think the most important thing that you can do is build a foundation of starting to be really conscious about not what you believe, but what you want to believe. Last year, we got evicted from our house. We got a letter in the mail saying you have 60 days to leave the premises because we're selling it. Mm-hmm. Now, I reckon it was maybe a year. So we'd been living there for about 18 months. 6 months into living there, I said to my fiance, I think this is our house. And he's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I just think this is our house. Like, I feel like this is where we're supposed to live for like a long time. And we just started saying like, yeah, like imagine if we bought this house. We just kept saying that all the time. Mm-hmm. Imagine if we bought this house. And there was one day in particular that I remember we were walking around the house with my 6-year-old and we were like, when we buy the house, we're going to, like my fiance's in the building industry. And so he's like, I'll knock that wall down and we'll do this and we'll do that. And my little one goes, he said, are we putting a pool in our house? Like he was just like, so, and we weren't doing it to consciously manifest anything. Yeah. We were just doing it because it was just fun. And then we get this letter. And it was like, you're being evicted because we're selling the house. And I'd had the conversation with my fiance and said, in like 5 years' time, why don't we reach out to the landlord and see if he's willing to sell the house? It's like I literally said in 5 years' time. We get this letter and my stomach dropped. Like I was devastated because not only was it like my dream house that was now being sold, but it was also like you have 60 days to move a family of 5, try and find it. And this, this house is huge. So like we'd gotten accustomed to having all this space and it was like, we're never going to find another house like this. And for about an hour, I remember it was funny. I was actually at Crown at the time. I was having like a little staycation just by myself for a little Mother's Day getaway. I just had like an incredible month in business. It was just what you were talking about. It was like, I think it was like a $92,000 month. Like it was just crazy. And I was celebrating. I was on such a high because it wasn't like, I'd done like this $92,000 lunch. I've launched. It was just like, I don't even know where this is coming from.
What the fuck was
but
that?
Like, I'm like, what just happened? But cool, let's celebrate it. And I was on such a high and then I was just sitting there like, what is this? And for about an hour, I was just devastated. And then I said, I was like, because I do believe in expanding our capacity to receive. And I do believe that we have upper limits. And I was like, no, I'm not letting this like ruin my celebration. I'm not letting this ruin my stay at Crown. So I was like, no, like I'm coming back to just being present. And then something just came over me. It was like, whether you want to call it a download or whatever it is, but it was almost like this dialogue that I had with the universe. So it was sort of like, you're not kicking me out of this house, are you? Because I went back to those belief systems and I'm like, well, my number one belief system is the universe wants what I want for myself more than I even want it. The universe wants that for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, what I want is I wanted to buy this house. And so I was thinking about it and I'm like, you're asking me to buy this house now, which
Was not
you
the
looked
plan.
at everything and it's like, no, you can't do that. Because this wasn't just like any old house.
Yeah.
This was like, you know,
Yeah.
an incredible house. It was like, I remember years ago, my fiance would always say like, you know, we're going to have to move further out and we're going to have to buy a dump and we're going to have to like, and I just said to him, so I'm not willing to do that. Like, I just don't believe in that. I believe that when we buy our house, it'll be in this suburb, the one that we love. It'll be incredible. And he's like, okay, delusional. But like now he's like, hey, what's that stuff you're talking about? No, he's all over it. But I just said, no, like we're buying, this is our opportunity. And I said it to, I called my fiance and I was in a bit of a like, I was a bit like, he probably thought I was a bit crazy. And I was like, I just think this is our opportunity. And he was not expecting me to come back with that. And I'm very convincing in those moments. And I remember I sent him a text and it said, let's buy this fucking house. Full stop. From there, we went on like, it was like the craziest mission you've ever seen. Like it was just the most wild. All of a sudden, you know, this is how it works. Like all of a sudden I've got like the most incredible banker who I don't even know where he came from. And all of a sudden he's on my team trying to make things work for me. All of a sudden this person's giving me this information and I've got this real estate agent that's helping us in this way. And all of a sudden we're finding out details that we're, you know, all of these different things. And it's just like, it was like out of a movie. And to cut a very, very long story short, with a lot of like, to the point that there was times that we were told no. Like we got rejected in certain things and it was like, no. And it was my willingness of like, I didn't come this far to just come this far. Like I know that this house is supposed to be us. So even when someone is literally sitting there saying no. I'm like, in my, and literally I had an experience like that. We got a no. 10 minutes later, it was, I almost laughed at the universe. I was like, you were really you made me wait 10 minutes with that. And I got another call and it was like, actually, we can do this, we can do that, we can do that. From my unwillingness to just not settle. It was like, no, this, I know this to be true. Like this is our house. Long story short, in 38 days, we bought that house.
That's wild. That's wild. And I think even just hearing that, like I think so many people can benefit from that on even a much smaller level. Right? I'm sure you see it a lot. I see it so often. Similar to what we spoke about before around like, hey, let's try this for a little bit. It doesn't work. Let's give up and do something else. It's like once you make, again, I feel like I learned this from some of your content, like the energy that you carry from a convicted decision.
Yeah.
Without having to know the how, without having to know the steps, the strategy, any of that type of shit. It's like make a convicted decision about what it is that you want and be unwilling to let go of that conviction and just be relentless towards what it is that you want or the outcome that you are striving for. And I mean, fuck, you have to come into these things expecting to have hiccups and speed bumps and it shouldn't be a surprise that shit becomes difficult sometimes. But I think having that level of belief and resilience to just go, okay, this is what I want and it is happening.
Everything that I have created has come from that. And but it's not even, I wouldn't even say it's like a manufactured thing of like, I'm going to decide this because I think this is going to make me happy. And I think this, it's more like I'm going to claim that. Right? It's like I can feel that thing brings me a lot of joy and brings me a lot of expansion to have as a part of my life. It's not like I think I should want this, so I'm going to decide, because if it's coming from the mind, it's not going to happen. But if it's coming from this thing of like, I can feel that this is deeply expanding me to have my reality as this thing. I literally think you can beat anyone with like I absolutely understand that people have very different backgrounds and have been through different things, but I really at the core of me believe that anything is possible with exactly what you just said, like a complete conviction of certainty. And what I would say is like, even if you don't have the exact decision of what you want, it's like if you have that certainty that you're here to create a life that, let's put it this way, becomes a really good story for when you are, even if you're just talking to your grandkids, if you future cast out to when you're 80 years old and you're thinking about the stories you want to tell your grandkids, even if it's like, I want to be able to tell them something wild, like that gets to be it. And you know what? The other thing I want to say is after we bought the house, I don't know if you heard this I think if you listened to the masterclass, I think you're referring to, I think I told this story. After we bought the house, just out of sheer coincidence, I was looking through the notes in my phone. I found a note from, must have been 3 years before or 2 years before, that said, it was something along the lines of like, Dear Universe, I want to buy the house of our dreams. This is how much money I'm going to need. This is what I want the house to be. I did not even know that I wrote that message. I did not even know that that was there. When I say it was the exact amount of money that I had, and it's so funny because people are like, how did you grow so quickly in your business, and how did you, and I'm like, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it just that I deeply desired to create all of these other things in my life, and the business was just the path of least resistance to make them happen really quickly? Yeah, I'd say so. And so many people are like, tell me all the stuff about the business. I'm like, don't worry about it. Go and set more goals in your life of what you want to experience, what you want to do, and start finding the path of least resistance. Like, we could go on a whole tangent around how if you work with the energy of money, it'll lead you down that pathway. But it's like, again, like I said, none of this is tangible. I didn't go out and be like, this is the year I'm going to buy a house. Universe literally said, you're buying a house now. Universe said, you're having a baby now. Now you're having another one. Now you're having another one. You're quantum leaping your business now. It wasn't like, how do I do this? Like, tell me. And that's the difficult thing, because, people want it to be this linear thing. They want it to be step by step because they don't want to have those moments of uncertainty. And I'd say the thing is with humans is the two things that we're scared of the most is disappointment. And the other thing about the ego is the ego often would prefer to be right than it would be wealthy. Your ego wants to be right more than it wants to be wealthy. And so if you hear the things of like, it's not working, perfect. Now you're right. Right? Your ego's, I knew it wasn't going to work and it didn't. I was right. That's the problem, is like human beings don't have that understanding that's like it's called like being self-righteous. Like we've heard those words before. It's like we'd prefer to be right. In like, I knew it wasn't going to work. That to the human can actually feel better.
Feel good,
than it working, because that uncertainty of not knowing if you're going to be right or wrong is so much for people to hold. And this is what I talked about, holding the energy and being able to have those times where it's like everything about what is going on can feel wrong. But if you can go into this place of like, but I don't need to protect my ego's need to be right all the time. Welcome to a world of quantum leaping, of making the impossible possible. And people go, how did you do that? How did you do that? And I was like, well, I was okay with, I was okay with the timeline. I was okay with the journey. I was okay with the ups and downs. And what you asked me before about this year, I can't just say that when I'm, everything's going the way that I want. I have to look at this experience and go, you're preparing something for me that I don't even understand yet. And has that been easy to access in every moment? No, I'm human. I'm not superhuman. I'm human. I feel the intensity. I feel the fear. I've got trauma responses. I've got a nervous system that goes into fight or flight. I've got all those things. And I've got a part of me that is unwilling to believe that anything other than the extraordinary is what's happening in my life at all given times.
I love that. That's a perfect place to wrap up. But
I agree.
I have one thing I'm going to throw in. I'm kind of just basically reassuring that you now have to come back again.
Yeah.
I'm going to plant a little seed for the next time you come back in,
Okay.
right? Because one of the biggest things that we kind of referenced a little bit then, well, you did, but one of the biggest shifts that I found, particularly around my limiting beliefs and my energy around money, was, again, one of your lessons around the attachment style to money. Mm-hmm. And I'll just say that hearing that one segment of that coaching session, that masterclass, whatever it was, like drastically changed everything for me. Not only how I thought about it, but then almost instantly my experience of it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just going to leave that as a little bit of a teaser for our next session.
To Money Magnet?
Yes.
The program, yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
And so firstly, I'll just say that, like, thanks so much for your time. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if you've been on here 5 times, the conversations must be pretty decent. So I appreciate you coming back on and just sharing all of that. Again, very similar to our first conversation. Like, every time we have these chats, it completely lights me up. And I'm sure there are a lot of people, I hope that there's a lot of people at the moment that are feeling the same. And even more so, I hope there's a lot of people that are feeling that for the first time, because that's such an exciting moment, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you would agree. Like, I would highly recommend that you keep following that feeling, if that is you that's listening at the moment. And as I said at the start, I'll have all the links to our past episodes in the show notes below. I think it would be really wise to go back and have a listen to all of those, particularly that first one. And if there has been stuff in today's chat that, again, maybe is a little higher level than what you're used to, definitely go back through and have a listen to the previous ones. Of course, go and check out India's social media and all of the incredible value she has to offer as part of her business. And yeah, I'm pumped to have you back on again soon. But thanks so much for coming in. I'm very grateful, and hopefully you've enjoyed the conversation too.
Yeah, it was amazing, as always.
Thank you so much. And for you guys that are watching or listening at the moment, thank you as well. If you haven't subscribed to the show already, please do. We quite clearly have great value on the show, and can't wait to tune back in with you guys again in the next episode of the Fitness and Lifestyle Podcast.